So what we have when we start a new session is we have a master bus, and that is basically all we have in terms of channels and tracks. So Ardour comes with a couple of different types of channels and tracks. I'm going to explain them as I go along here, but we'll start by adding a MIDI track, because we'll start with MIDI in general. So in order to add a new track, you can go to an empty space here in the editor canvas, and you can right click and you get to add new track dialog like this. Or you can go to, let's see here in session and add track or bus. Or you can use this quick commando. I always use this more or less. It's most convenient. I don't have to click in menus and things like that. But we are going to go ahead here and add a MIDI track. And in order to, excuse me, I just had lunch. In order to add a MIDI track, you use this little dialog here and you select MIDI tracks. You can see that we have audio tracks, MIDI tracks, audio plus MIDI tracks, and buses. And I'll explain everything but audio plus MIDI tracks in this series. I think I'll get to buses as well, we'll see. We're going to add a MIDI track. Here you get to define how many tracks you want to add. For instance, when I record guitar, which you'll see later, I usually add like 10 tracks at once, so I'll have tracks to move my regions around on, my takes and things like that. But we're going to go ahead and add one MIDI track. And we are going to name this, let's see here, we'll start with, we'll name this E-piano. I like to start with electrical pianos, so we'll name it E-piano. As you can see here, these are grayed out, so you can't use these, but you can use instrument. Normally I don't use this to add a specific instrument to the MIDI track, and I will show you why in a second. But here you can select from a list of all of the plugins you have installed that are instruments or registered as synths. So you can see I have quite a lot. So if you want to set this up right away, you can go in here and you can select any of these, basically. But we are going to add this with the reasonable synth, which is a default thing in Ardour that just lets you make noises with MIDI, basically. It's nothing... well, you can use it in songs, of course. It sounds pretty cool, actually. But yeah, it's just a basic thing to demonstrate how MIDI works and the sound with MIDI. We'll go ahead and add this like that. And you can see right away that we get a new track, and when you can see that the track is marked, which exposes it here. Okay, so we'll start by going through the channel strip. So you can see here that we have the channel for the track, and on top you can see the name of the track. So if you want to rename the track, you can left click here and go to rename and just rename this to something else. Under that is the input. If you left click this, or rather let's start like this. If you right click this, you get a number of default inputs, or the inputs you have exposed right now from your hardware. So you can see that I have two different MIDI things. I have a MIDI through thing. I have the MIDI in from my sound card, and then I have what I talked about before, my MIDI keyboard. So we are going to start by selecting the MIDI keyboard. See, it didn't change because it starts with the same thing here, but the same, the right. Let's press the keyboard and press. Yeah, you can hear. So the right thing got selected. If you instead left click here, you get what's called the connection matrix. Now the connection matrix is what you use in all channels and all channel types to connect between things, both inside Ardour and out to other external programs and back, and everything in the entire universe is accessible through this, more or less. So you can see there's a bunch of tabs here. You have the hardware, you have Ardour MISC, which is a bunch of things I don't understand. You have Ardour tracks, which is all of the tracks available inside your session. We currently only have one, so it's not that much to, we shouldn't connect the output of the track to the same input, not good. So that's nothing. And then we have the other, which is where the things I might consider using is contained, and also where I have my USB key station. Great. Now to the right of this is this. This enables or disables MIDI input. So if I play here, give me a second. I guess you can hear a little. If I press that one, nothing happens when I frenetically press my keyboard. Okay, great. This is useful when you add stuff to your song, or you play with different sounds in your song, and you want to make sure that only one channel gets MIDI, the channel that you want to hear currently when you play your keyboard. So remember that one. We're going to enable this again. Next is there's a kind of signal editor, or whatever you want to call it. So this currently consists of the Reasonable Synth, which is the actual plugin we're using to make sound. So if I remove this, I right click that and delete it, it makes no sound. You can see that it registers that I press the MIDI things, but it makes no sound because there's nothing on this track that's actually making or taking the MIDI signals and turning them into sound, which is what a synth does, and a bunch of other things do as well. Then you have this, which is the fader. The fader is this one. It controls the signal's volume, more or less. And I'm going to show you how you can use that later on. But starting out, the only thing you need to think about when adding things is start by adding them pre-fader. So if you want to add things to this, you can right-click anywhere in the dialog. If you want to add things after the fader, you right-click here. You go to New Plugin, if that's what you want to add. And you go to Plugin Manager, or in my case, I have a bunch of favorites that I've set up already, which you do inside of the Plugin Manager, and I'm going to go through it in a second. If you want to add things pre-fader, which I'm going to do now, you just go and hover over this fader thing, and you right-click, and you go to the same thing here. But we'll go into the Plugin Manager now, so we'll bring this up. You can see that you get all of your plugins installed, listed here, which is a heck load of plugins for me. And what I am going to do is I am going to add an e-piano, the MDA e-piano. So start by searching for e-piano. Yeah, and you can select different search options here as well. Name contains, type contains, category, blah blah blah, a bunch of things. But in general, this is the way you want to do. So if I want to find an equalizer, I can start by searching for EQ. Oops. And you can see that I get a bunch of things that have equalizer in their name. We'll go back to adding the e-piano now. And you can see that there's two versions of this, one LV2 and one VST. For some reason, the LV2 is like out of tune or something like that. I haven't had a good experience with that, even though it's the identical plugin when you work with the GUI. So I am using the VST one. You can use whatever you want. I'll use this for demonstrational purposes. Now you can see here as well that I have checked in the favorites box here. Fav means favorites in this case. That means that if I press this, it will be exposed in my favorites menu when I add plugins, which is nice if you want to quickly add stuff that you usually use. But we'll go ahead and double click that one with the left button, or you can click add here. Now we're adding two. That's not very good, but you can see here that plugins to be connected, and it gets populated with what you pull from here. I'm going to remove that one, and you can see that we have the MDA piano will be added to the track. Now, if you want to add more plugins at once, you can of course look them up. If I'd want a compressor right after the e-piano, regardless of what I did, I could go here and choose invalid compressor. I could press that, and I would get it added in sequence. But I don't care about that currently. I just want to add my e-piano. So we'll go ahead and do that, and when we're done with the configuration in the plugin manager, we'll press insert plugins. And there we go, and now we can hear that sound is back. Yay! Okay. Give me a second, I'm just going to raise my volume here. Okay, cool, great. Awesome. So the MDA e-piano is added to our to our session. I'm just I'm messing with the volume here, so I can actually hear myself and everything that goes on in the computer and things like that. Okay, so we have the MDA piano added to the actual track. We have it making sound. Good, we're halfway there. Awesome. So we'll progress here and we'll go through more of the actual channel strip before we start dealing with MIDI. So you can see this little bugger here. That's called, what is that called? It basically controls panning, and in this case, since this is a stereo track, it controls the stereo field. So what you can do here is you can, for instance, grab the right one. This represents the right point of the stereo field, or if you grab that with the left click of the mouse and you pull that in, you make the stereo field smaller. So you can hear if I... You can hear a slight change in the stereo field of the actual, of the sound. So this makes, well, there's a couple of applications for this. I actually use this quite a lot when I make music, but first and foremost, what you might want to do with this is you can pan stuff in stereo. So for instance, if I want to put this at the right, I can't move this. I'm trying to left click and move this around, but I can't. So in order to do that, I'll have to decrease the stereo field. So I'll decrease this to 48%, whatever. And I'll pull this to the right. You can see that the sound moves to the right. You can also do that with the scroll wheel. Great. And if you want to reset this, if you want to reset this to the middle, you pull it there, and then you can double click with the left button and it'll automatically put it in the middle. And you can, oh, I reversed it, cool. I've never done that before. You can put it back there. What I did there was basically reversing, I guess, the face or the face of the, maybe I didn't, well, or the actual stereo field. So if I pull this all the way through, it reverses the stereo field. I don't know if that has a fancy application, maybe it does. Okay, moving on. These two buttons, they control if you want to hear the input from the channel or if you want to hear what's recorded on disk. So for instance, if I would have already recorded a bunch of things with the piano here, and I had a MIDI region here that had a bunch of MIDI notes that would make sound, and I had this put at, or rather I didn't press any of these, and I pressed play, that would make the sound, the MIDI regions. But if I instead activate monitor input, and I played, and it played the notes, no sound would be made, but rather you would be able to hear this if you play the piano yourself. I hope that makes sense. You can read more about that in the Ardour manual anyway, but basically we're going to use this later when we test stuff, more or less, when we want to play along with what we recorded before. Because if we deactivate this and we use play and we try to play, nothing happens. It only makes sound when we press in, because that tells it to don't take these notes here and play them. Instead, listen to what I play with my keyboard. And the opposite when you turn it off. So that's those. This is the record button. In order to record things, it's the same as this one, by the way. You can see that when I activate this, both get activated. If I want to record things, or if I want to record on this track, I have to arm this track, is what it's called. I have to press record. Because if I only press record up here and I start recording, nothing happens because this track isn't armed. But if I press this as well, you can see it starts recording that track. And you can see that we can get a bunch of MIDI notes here, so we'll get deeper into that later. Remove that for now. And these things that appeared was the start and end markers of the session. So you can control the length of the session or the length of the export of the session by using these. I usually put them like this before. There's no real using them before we're going to actually export things, so we'll wait with that. Okay, so that enables the record. Here's the traditional and classic mute and solo buttons. What they do is, actually we're going to put back the region here. We'll use this as demonstration. If we play here, you can hear that lovely little tune. Also, I'm going to activate what's called auto return here now. It's up here. If we press and activate that, so that shines, it will automatically, each time I press, I start playback and I stop playback, it'll jump back to where I started playback. So for instance, this is very useful when you're working with small portions of the song. Okay, so I'll also need to show you right away here how to navigate through the session. What I did there was I zoomed in and out. In order to zoom in and out, you hold Control and use the scroll wheel. Back to zoom out and forward to zoom in. Also, if you want to move along the x-axis of the session, or in sideways maybe in more layman's terms, you can use the playhead like this, but it's pretty it's not very efficient. So you can hold Shift on your keyboard and use the scroll wheel. And you'll see me doing this all the time because that's it's so much easier to move things back and forth. Another fancy thing with zooming is you can use this one. It's called the zoom to session, and it will zoom so that you make these two, everything that is the session, which is marked by these markers, will be taking up all the space. So if I press this, you can see it automatically zooms into my session. Okay, great. So where were we? Yeah, mute and solo. That's where we were. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to demonstrate solo because we only have one track, but mute works as you would expect it to work. It makes sound here, but it doesn't reach the speakers. Great. And then next we have the fader, which works also as you'd expect. If you play here, controls the volume. Here you have the meter. You can right-click this and select another meter. If you don't know what meters are, or what the different meters stand for, just keep it at peak. That's a classical meter that will show you just how loud each individual sound is, more or less. Excuse me. And this little bugger here shows you the level, the maximum level that has been played back. And if I left-click this, it resets it. And this is handy because whenever you peak something, let's see if we can peak this. We should be able to peak this. Nope. Crap. Okay, whatever. If I were to peak this, if this were to reach over zero here, it will come red. So you can, when mixing and things like that, you can just look for red kind of boxes here. In the mixer or something like that. Okay. So this controls the fader automation mode. We are not going to do any automation here. I'll save that for another tutorial. But basically, you don't need to care about this unless you're automating. If you're automating, you have to set this to play, for instance, in order for it to play back the automation. But yeah, more about that in another video or another tutorial. This one as well, we're not going to talk about this either. It's the metering point. Currently the metering point is a post fader, which means that the meter will show you how loud the sound is after this one. If I change this to pre, the meter will show me how loud this is before this one. And there's a bunch of other options here as well. Out is how loud it is here on the outputs, because you can have things post fader as well. And then here's custom, which gives you the meter, so you can put this wherever you want. If I put this here, you can see that I will only see the actual MIDI here. I won't see the actual sound, because when the meter makes its notes or makes its measurements, the MDI piano hasn't got any sound yet. If I move this here, you can see it changes and we get the actual sound. But if I decrease the volume here, you can see that the sound level stays the same in the meter, and that's because it hasn't passed the fader before it passes the meter. So if I move this here, you can see that it decreases. Okay, so that's useful for different types of measurements and when you want to find specific problems and things like that. But we are going to put this back at post because that is the thing that we're currently interested in. Okay, and lastly, these two. This is the outputs. So again, if I left click this, I get the connection matrix. And I get a bunch of tabs here, as I showed before. And we also get to see, here we get to see what outputs there are. So we can see that we have a left output from the electrical piano, we have a right output from the electrical piano, and we have a MIDI output. And we can see here that, for instance, we'll go to Ardour buses here. We can see that this is connected to the left output, the left input of the master bus, which takes care of all the sound, and then also the right input of the master bus. So that's nice. You can also see that the master bus does not accept MIDI, which is why this is grayed out or white. If we were to go to, we'll take this as an example. If we were to go to this, and you can see my USB key station, which is a USB MIDI keyboard, you can see that it accepts MIDI input, but it doesn't accept audio input. But basically, when we look at the outputs here now, this early in the song, we have the master is where we send the sound. Okay. And the comments is just, you can add comments to things. So, nice piano, lol. Yeah, you can add that like this. And whenever you get back to the session and you wonder, oh, what was my thought with the electrical piano in this session? You can see, oh, I made comments because there's stars around here. I wonder what that is. Oh, nice piano, lol. Okay, so it's a nice piano. Great. So that can be useful. I use that quite often, at least. Actually, I was lying there. I almost never use that, but I should use it because I usually forget why I put stuff in sessions, and then it doesn't make sense when I get back, and yeah, all sorts of problems.